What if the world had taken a different turn? What if one battle, one decision, one moment in time had gone the other way, and everything we know today had never come to be? This is not history, but it is a chilling alternate timeline. Let's explore what the world might look like today if Hitler had won. A world where Germany won the Second World War, where the swastika flew over Moscow, where atomic fire rained on American cities, and where, today, most of the world speaks German. This is What the If. In real history, the Battle of Stalingrad was the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. Over 1 million soldiers died in the frozen ruins of a Soviet city on the Volga River. The German Sixth Army was encircled, starved, and forced to surrender. It was the moment the tide turned. But what if it hadn't? Imagine a version of events where Hitler listens to his generals, where German supply lines hold, where the German army successfully cuts off Soviet reinforcements before the winter sets in. Stalingrad falls to Germany. By early 1943, in this alternate world, the German advance on Moscow resumes with a ferocity the Soviets cannot match. Moscow falls. It is a moment that shakes the world. The Soviet Union does not immediately surrender. Stalin retreats east and vows to fight on. Over the next 18 months, Germany consolidates control over European Russia, Ukraine, and the Baltic. What remains of the Soviet state is a rump government in the Urals, stripped of its industrial base, cut off from its allies, and slowly dying. The Eastern Front is effectively over. In real history, the Manhattan Project in the United States to build the atomic bomb was a race. Scientists who had fled Nazi persecution, Einstein, Fermi, Szilard, brought their brilliance to America. But in this alternate world, many of those scientists never make it out of Europe. Some are captured, some are put to work. And Germany, flush with victory, unlimited resources, and the scientific talent of a conquered continent, accelerates its own nuclear weapons program. By 1945, Germany has the bomb. Not one. Two. The question now is how to use them. The United States, still untouched on its side of the Atlantic, is the last major industrial power standing against the Third Reich. Britain has already negotiated a fragile armistice. The Soviet Union is collapsing. America is alone. Germany has no long-range bombers capable of reaching the American mainland. But Japan, still fighting a brutal war in the Pacific, has something else. Kamikaze pilots. Volunteers who have already proven they will die for their emperor. A secret agreement is reached between Berlin and Tokyo. Germany provides Japan with one of its nuclear devices, along with the technical knowledge to arm and deploy it. A specially modified Japanese aircraft, flying a one-way mission, carries the weapon across the Pacific. The target, New York City. The bomb detonates on a clear morning in the harbor. The destruction is incomprehensible. 300,000 dead in the first hour. The financial capital of the world, gone. Weeks later, a second device, delivered by a German submarine-launched aircraft off the coast, detonates near Washington, D.C. The American government is decapitated. The president is dead. The cabinet is in chaos. The United States surrenders on September 3, 1946, in this alternate timeline. The terms are unlike anything in modern history. Germany does not occupy America in the traditional sense. It is too large, too armed, too dangerous to hold by force alone. Instead, it dismantles America's power permanently. The great industrial machinery of Detroit, Pittsburgh, and the Ohio Valley is physically removed and shipped to Europe. Factories are stripped. Rail networks are sabotaged. The American military is disbanded, and its weapons destroyed or confiscated. The country is then politically fragmented. The federal government is dissolved. America is broken into a collection of semi-autonomous states with no central authority, no military, and no unified economy. The East Coast, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, becomes a formal German colonial territory administered from Berlin. It is renamed the Ostküste Verwaltungszone, the Eastern Coast Administrative Zone. German settlers begin arriving within the decade. The architecture changes, the street signs change, the language in schools changes. The rest of what was America is left to fracture. With no serious opposition remaining, the Third Reich enters a period of imperial expansion that has no historical parallel in the modern era. By the early 1950s, Nazi Germany has transformed Europe into a single authoritarian superstate. France, the Netherlands, Belgium, Scandinavia, and Eastern Europe all exist as either occupied territories or puppet governments. Berlin is redesigned into a gigantic imperial capital called Germania. Gigantic avenues, massive monuments, and colossal buildings are meant to symbolize the power of the empire. The population of this empire now exceeds 500 million people. With the Soviet Union gone and the United States weakened, no global power remains capable of challenging Germany directly. The world enters a new era. Africa, already partially colonized by European powers, is absorbed completely. German East Africa, German West Africa, German Central Africa. The entire continent becomes a resource extraction zone. Local populations are subjected to brutal racial hierarchies straight out of Nazi ideology. Resistance is crushed with overwhelming force. The Middle East comes next. The oil fields of Arabia, Iraq, and Persia are placed under direct German administration. There is no Israel. The Jewish populations of Europe, we must say plainly, have been subjected to the Holocaust. And in this timeline, with no Allied liberation, that genocide completes itself without interruption. South Asia, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific are divided between Germany and Japan in a formal treaty, the Berlin-Tokyo Partition Agreement. Japan controls everything east of India. Germany controls the rest. Latin America, lacking any American protection, falls into a network of German proxy governments. Fascist-aligned leaders, backed by German money and military advisors, take power in Argentina, Brazil, Chile, and beyond. By 1955, the German Reich directly controls, or dominates through proxies, roughly 60% of the Earth's landmass and more than half its population. Adolf Hitler dies in 1956 at the age of 67 from heart failure, the combined result of his long-documented health deterioration, drug dependency, and the stress of managing a global empire. He leaves no clear successor. 5 figures emerge as candidates for supreme power. Heinrich Himmler, head of the SS, the most feared man in the Reich. Albert Speer, the architect and industrial genius who built the war machine. Hermann Göring, Martin Bormann, Hitler's shadow who controls access to the bureaucracy. And a younger generation represented by figures like Reinhard Heydrich. After 2 years of internal power struggle, assassinations, and political maneuvering, what history books would later call the Night of the Eagle, one man emerges. Reinhard Heydrich, younger than the others, more intelligent, more dangerous. He consolidates control of the SS, the military, and the colonial administration. He modernizes the Reich's ideology just enough to make it sustainable, softening some of the more overtly chaotic racial policies in favor of a rigid, stable caste system. He is not less evil than Hitler. He is more efficient. Under Heydrich and his successors, the Reich evolves into a hereditary imperial system. So what would the world look like right now, today, if all of this had come to pass? Let's be realistic about it. The language of global commerce, science, media, and culture would be German. Just as English dominates our world today, German would be the language every educated person on Earth would be expected to speak. Hollywood would not exist. The global film industry would be centered in Berlin and Munich, producing propaganda and entertainment that glorifies the Reich. There would be no State of Israel. The Jewish people, having suffered a completed Holocaust with no liberation, would exist only in the most diminished communities in far-flung corners of the world, perhaps parts of South America or East Asia outside German reach. The United States as we know it would not exist. The East Coast would be a German-speaking colonial territory with German architecture, German institutions, and a mixed population. The Statue of Liberty, if it still stood, would be a museum piece, a relic of a dead republic. The interior of the continent would be a patchwork of weak statelets, economically dependent on the right. The internet, if it existed at all, would be a tightly controlled state network. There would be no free press. Journalism would be a function of the state. The BBC, CNN, Reuters, none of these would exist. Instead, Reichsrundfunk, the state broadcasting system, would be the voice of global news. Religion would be heavily suppressed in the European core, replaced by a state-sponsored neo-pagan ideology. Christianity would survive in the colonies, but in a diminished and controlled form. Technology would be advanced in some areas. The Reich would have invested heavily in aerospace, nuclear energy, and military hardware. But it would stagnate in others. Without the free exchange of ideas, without open universities, without the immigration of diverse talent, innovation would be slower, more centralized, more controlled. Most people alive today would never have known democracy. They would not know what it meant to vote, to protest, or to speak freely. Those concepts would exist only in underground movements, whispered about in basements, printed on illegal pamphlets. History is not inevitable. It is made of moments, battles won and lost, decisions made in exhaustion and fear. The fact that you are watching this video in a free country, in your own language, with the ability to think and say whatever you believe, that is the result of millions of people who fought, suffered, and died so that the world we live in would not become the one we just described. Remember that. This has been What the If. If you made it to the end, thank you for watching. If this made you think, share it and subscribe, because history is stranger than fiction, and we are only just getting started.